Hey, Mike, Dan's joining now, just so you know. He'll be on in about a minute.
Who's that?
There's still a couple minutes to go.
What was that, Trevor?
Brady's joining here in a minute. He just called.
Roger and Mark will, we typically review this normally, if they have more intricate questions or concerns, the provider can simply answer the questions better than. That's who is the Yeah, a director over Enterprise Community Partners. And then Mark runs the whole thing.
Everybody doesn't mind muting themselves? Thank you.
How we doing, Ashley?
All right, we are live, so I guess you and Janine can start whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Mike, you have a quorum, so you can start whenever.
Right. Nan and Alex, could you both mute, please? Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the September 22nd Cuyahoga County Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Ms. Baker,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Mr. Brady,
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. Is there a public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Okay, in your packets, we have the minutes of the July 28th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept the motion in a second.
So move Conwell.
I have a motion.
Second, Brady.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. 2020-0205.
Resolution number 2020-0205, making an award on requisition number 47422 to Enterprise Community Partners in the amount not to exceed $600,000 for a justice housing plan and implementation strategy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Michelle, do we have you?
No, Crystal Bryant will be presenting this item, Chairman.
Okay. Crystal?
All right, good afternoon, members of committee. My name is Crystal Bryant. I have the privilege of serving as the director for our Cuyahoga County Office of Reentry under the auspices of Health and Human Services. I have a few co-presenters on the line with me today, which I will introduce as well. We have Fred Bollison. He's our Senior Program Administrator at the Office of Reentry. And we also have Elizabeth Richards and Mark McDermott of Enterprise Community Partners, both on the line. We are co-presenting this matter in the event there are more intricate details that you seek in terms of the implementation strategy. We want to ensure that you have all the proper answers given today so that this motion can move forward. So the reason why the Office of Reentry is presenting this issue or this strategy coming forward, the Office of Reentry is a very small office serving over 20,000 individuals in the Cuyahoga County area who have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. We currently have one housing program that we fund. It has capacity to service upwards of 100 individuals every calendar year. Yet we have 4,500 individuals every calendar year who are have unstable housing or who experience insecure housing. So there are not enough financial resources across the county to necessarily support those 4,500 individuals who need this supportive service and to gain secure housing so that they can stabilize their life, come home and make a safe return, and ultimately advance moving forward for their families and increase public safety for those residents throughout Cuyahoga County. As a result of some of these issues that we incur, the Office of Reentry thought about what if we had the opportunity to not be building and driving at the same time, but instead make data-informed decisions on how we move forward, and to also really understand and maximize what the issues are so that we can collectively, systematically impact these things and not just band-aid some of our concerns for those who are justice involved. As a result, in 2018, our federal government, through the Second Chance Act, issued a grant asking for a systems-level solution to both housing insecurities and employment issues. The Office of Reentry applied for that grant, and we won the award. We, as a result, we combined levy dollars with our federal resources, and then we issued an RFP asking for the same thing. We asked a provider to be able to submit proposals in regards to putting together a strategy that for the entire county that faces the insecure housing issues as well as unstable housing issues that impact our homeless shelter. 70% of our individuals inside of our homeless shelter would have criminal justice involvement. So we wanted to be able to take a look at that. We wanted to be able to take a look at some of the barriers to access or fair access to housing, to make equitable solutions across the county, but across our systems as well. So when we issued the RFP, we utilized our Office of Homeless Services. We also utilized our Office of Community Development across the aisle to help us score these proposals and find the right provider to implement this new strategy. This new strategy also requires that the provider not just look to the government for financial resources to scale this model. They have to look at public-private partnerships. They have to be able to fundraise on their own and then consistently unlock units over a period of time as they consistently also provide data-informed care for all of us as a system. So when we are able to look at best practices that work for our local government in terms of housing structure and all the individuals that are impacted, this is data that can be shared across community development, data that can be shared to inform Ruth Group over in homeless services, and ultimately data for our jail and any other vendor within Cuyahoga County who needs these resources and information to make sure we can stabilize our population. That concludes my piece of this part. Open to questions if you all have them.
Crystal, this is Mike Gallagher. And how, now 2018, we got the federal grant and it took till now to implement this with this strategy, or did we spend money in 2018 on that strategy?
We did not spend money in 2018. That's a great question, Councilman. This was the first time in history for the federal government that they allowed 1 year of planning at the beginning of their federal fiscal year one. So starting October 2018, we spent 1 year actually planning how we would strategize and do this, as opposed to, the normal 30 days they give you, and you're kind of forced to just implement it without being really sure how the implementation strategy goes from writing the proposal into the implementation phase. So 1 year was spent writing and crafting and planning with community partners how we should be able to execute this work. In the beginning of federal fiscal year 2, we issued the RFP for this work, which is like phase 2 for us. And unfortunately, we didn't receive the amount of proposals that we needed. And so we then reissued the RFP, and that's what has taken us so long to get to this point. So no dollars have been utilized in this space as of to date.
Okay, so Enterprise Community Partners will be controlling this for us?
That is correct.
Okay, and how were they chosen?
They were chosen through a competitive bidding process. So in the beginning of federal fiscal year 2, the Office of Reentry issued the competitive bid out into the community. When multiple providers bid out, it didn't seem like they were understanding what it is we were looking for. So we regrouped with our contracts unit, and we thought about perhaps we are not doing something right in our RFP because it's not soliciting the responses that we need to move a community-wide strategy. Most of our responses were focused around programs, much like we already fund. So again, we'll be looking at one program model that may be able to service up to 150 people. Ultimately, it's a method to stabilizing and securing housing, but it's not a strategy that ultimately looks at the grand scale. So we went back to the drawing board, recreated the RFP, re-released it. And then on a scoring team, we utilized partners such as our Office of Community Development, Sarah Parks Jackson, and also our Office of Homeless Services. So Ruth Gillette was present, and then our team at the Office of Reentry and some team from the CAPS unit.
Okay, as far as qualifications for individuals receiving this help, is one of those being a Cuyahoga County resident?
Yes. So any service issued by the Office of Reentry, we serve primarily as a funder. They in fact must be a Cuyahoga County resident to receive services and support.
Thank you. Questions for Crystal? Hearing none. Okay, Crystal, it sounds to me like the committee is comfortable with this to move forward. Nan, did you have
Chair?
something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. So I had to
That's all right. Go ahead.
This is the first I've heard, and it sounds like a great program. I see that 110,000 is the federal part and 490 is HHS funding. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councilwoman Baker.
Okay, and did I hear you say that 4,500 were the amount of people that are in unstable housing?
That is correct, Councilwoman Baker.
Okay, so how, I did hear your strategy, it was rather quick, but how do you intend on putting 4,500 people into stable housing? I mean, where would they go? What is your plan to make sure that they do have the resources they need to have stable housing? How are you going to do that?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think the first piece of this is recognizing that we have to create a strategy. We know that this is non-traditional to put forth something like this in terms of the Office of Reentry that falls under Health and Human Services. But the reality is we are usually forced to be in a position where we are constantly building and driving. Therefore, we don't have great impact and it's not leading to solutions. And so one of the reasons why we did this is to put together a strategy. And so respectfully speaking, in this space, we understand what returnees need. We're good systems level strategists, but I don't serve in the housing space or the market. And what tends to happen is because I'm focused on individuals with a specific barrier, they have multiple different varying needs. And as an Office of Reentry, we'll try to create a programmatic model in a space that we are not experts. So we need this, and we need this particular team because they serve in the space of community development. They understand the housing market. They understand who all the key players are. And they've already began to drive some of this work. They were able to put together a bit of a qualitative study through an organization called CSH, my apologies. And CSH has already produced some preliminary data. That's where I got the 4,500 number from. That's very specific to Cuyahoga County. And then in addition to that, they've already begun to kind of look at what units actually exist in Cuyahoga County, and then what are the funding sources, who are the partners. So we're getting real live informed data that would support us all ultimately and have a strategy to move the Office of Reentry forward into the long-term future, even beyond the term of the 2.5 years of grant funding.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So the year
I'm
of
sorry.
planning that I think you previously said you did, you've already been in this and you're planning, you haven't spent any money, but you've been planning. Now you're going into a strategy stage beyond that planning? Okay. and
Yes,
how long do you
Councilwoman. So
think that strategy will take before you actually implement what it is that you want to do to help these people with their housing?
Sure. So I think a part of this is the fact that we're looking at and we're able to examine existing program structures and how we can make those programs better and more effective. And the other piece is the ability to begin fundraising and thinking about unlocking new units and studying and evaluating what we do in that space for these individuals to be able to raise in the scale and knowing if they really work or not. So in the first 2.5 years, in addition to building a strategy, it'll be focused on more short-term tactics, such as those things. And then ultimately, this particular group can move forward with the Office of Reentry without necessarily receiving financial resources from the government in this space, but still moving the initiative forward and staying committed to it.
Okay. So if I may just wrap up, so your ultimate goal at the end of 2.5 years is to have worked through the planning process, the strategy, connected with other organizations and actually implement using the 500,000, actually it's 600,000, and putting people in places to live. Is that the ultimate goal of this, and for them to be self-sustaining without government assistance is the ultimate goal?
That is the ultimate goal, Councilwoman. We recognize it's an ambitious one, which will be done in tiers. So again, there will be long-term planning and objectives that occur outside of the 2.5 years that the partnership that we created will move forward and continue in. But this at least gets us off the ground. It's like a sprinkler in a system where we need large amounts of things, but recognizing that there are dollars in community development, there are already resources in homeless services. And so the Office of Reentry does not need to request more resources because it'll never be financially enough. We need to be more efficient and strategize better in how we use things across county and across sectors because we're compartmentalizing human beings. And so in order to make sure that the needs are met, we just have to come together better as a system and have greater collaboration. And that's what we're attempting to do.
Okay, well, thank you very much for explaining that further. I wish you luck, and it sounds like a great program, and I agree with what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
She did all that without any notes.
Yeah. I can't breathe.
Further questions for Crystal?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Crystal, is all of this money for planning, coordination, and strategy, or will there actually be some housing services directly provided? And if so, how many and to whom?
So that's a great question, Councilman Miller. The bulk of the funding will in fact be for planning, strategy, and fundraising efforts. However, there will be an opportunity within the first 2.5 years to begin unlocking some units. And to my knowledge, I believe they're looking at servicing approximately 150 new units being unlocked, but Elizabeth and Mark can speak better to that. So Elizabeth or Mark, would you please chime in if possible?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Elizabeth Richards with Enterprise Community Partners, and want to just express appreciation for the opportunity to be here today, and appreciation for Director Bryant's leadership on this issue. In particular, Enterprise Community Partners has been operating in Cuyahoga County. Many of you may know this through a number of signature initiatives, Housing First being the most like what we're talking about today, through Housing First and the Office of Homeless Services, where Enterprise provided backbone support. Over 10 years, we've been able to almost end chronic homelessness in Cuyahoga County through the creation of nearly 800 plus units of housing for the chronically homeless population here. We're looking to do something similar, and as Crystal has already indicated, what we're talking about in terms of an initial strategy and planning period, but moving right into a pilot process where we're working with our housing partners to model out and begin serving individuals returning from the criminal justice sector or justice individuals with justice involvement. So we're anticipating working with existing housing managers to, as Director Bryant has said, unlock units so that we are working with landlords today to have them better understand fair housing laws, get comfortable with being referred to, and then having a place to refer individuals who aren't high need and who just need a stable, safe home to live in. So we're anticipating by the end of this planning period to be piloting and have at least 50 units in service that we can directly point to through this initiative. We're anticipating a smaller number of units that would be partnerships between housing providers, most likely nonprofit housing providers, and services organizations, so that you have in blocks of 10 or 20 or 30 programmatic units available to individuals returning. There are some examples of this now in Cuyahoga County, and we're looking to scale and or evaluate and create new partnerships to provide program units available. And then in addition to that, and this is the longer term, but we can make progress within this planning period and implementation period, we will start a pipeline of new units developed. The best practice by far is permanent supportive housing, and we would look potentially to create a permanent supportive housing project serving a subpopulation that is justice involved in Cuyahoga County, and we would look to develop some in addition to permanent supportive housing, we would work with our housing partners, again, organizations you're familiar with on the east and west side of Cleveland, to begin developing and financing units that are serving a justice housing population. So all of this adds up to at least 150 units. Of course, we're being careful with that number. It could be that we exceed that number going forward, particularly in the work with the private sector and unlocking existing units.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
If I may ask, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term. What is unlocking units? What does that mean?
So my apologies. It's almost like slang for me because we do it. We speak about it so often. Elizabeth made the effort to correct me when she gave her presentation. Essentially, it just means the existing structures or units in terms of housing models and programs that already are open. Looking at how do we work with these existing providers to create newer opportunities and eliminate the barriers for people to be housed. And if that's not clear enough, I'm sure Elizabeth is happy to give you a better definition, Councilwoman Baker.
I guess, for example, what are the barriers that you're unlocking?
So for example, many of our typical housing providers that Enterprise works with have different tenant selection plans. So they each have a tenant selection plan with different criteria. Many of them are not familiar with fair housing guidance, certainly most recently updated by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, that liberalizes their tenant selection plan process to allow individuals with criminal backgrounds to live in the housing. So the first level of work that we'll be doing will be really targeting these partners to educate them on the most up-to-date policy and work with them to have progressive tenant selection plans in place. Some housing organizations, for-profit and nonprofit, have different look-back periods. So they'll look back 5 years for criminal history. They'll look back 25 years. And so it would be getting consistent, getting these housing organizations ready to opt in to serve this population. Councilwoman, am I answering your question?
Yes, that's helpful. I appreciate it. And thank you, Chair, for allowing me to ask.
Yes, ma'am. Anything further for any of the ladies?
Yes, Mr. Gallagher, Chairman Gallagher.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this question is for Elizabeth Richards or Director Bryant. Is there any certain models of housing in the nation now that replicate this, what you're trying to do?
So I can start, and then Elizabeth, feel free to chime in where possible. There are varying best practice housing models for those who are formerly incarcerated that can be provided at a national scale. The issue is that geographically, things look very different county to county and city to city. So no one has, that I'm aware of, has ever attempted to do a restorative justice approach to this magnitude, where you are looking at the whole. I'm not just focused on those who come out of the county jail. I'm not just focused on those who are in the city jail. I'm not just focused on those coming out of prison, but those who are directly impacted as a whole collectively. Again, recognizing that, these are human beings. We often compartmentalize in a way that is not beneficial to the human beings and exploration of what their needs are. So the answer is yes and no. And so what we'll be looking to do is not only look to those models that already are in existence, but take them and create a blueprint for ourselves locally that someone in other cities who are geographically similarly situated can replicate.
Are there any, this is such a large scale, 50 to 150, not quoting you on the number, but resources in place to assist the individuals that would, I'm assuming this would be 100, I'm envisioning 150 unit place. Am I envisioning that right? Or these will be separate units? And that's just the total number of units that we're striving for.
That's right. These would be scattered site units in different projects. Certainly a best practice is, although permanent supportive housing, which has units in one place, is a best practice nationally, and we do see projects specifically serving justice involved populations in the large urban centers, so New York City and Los Angeles in particular, Northern California. Those projects are often 30, 40, 50 units. That would be a maximum size. What we're looking at are smaller numbers, and certainly the bulk of the 150 units we're looking at would not be concentrated in one geographic location.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Further questions? Okay. I think we have sufficiently vetted this program. It sounds to me like the committee is happy to move forward. And if that is true, I'll accept the motion on resolution 2020-0205 under second reading, suspension to the full council.
So moved, Conwell.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second, Baker.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much, ladies.
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you, committee members.
You're welcome. 2020-0206.
Resolution number 2020-0206, making an award on requisition number 00089 to Celix ES, the amount not to exceed $823,236.96 for the fixed automated license plate recognition project.
Thank you. Alex, are you going to be presenting for this, I heard?
Yes, sir. I believe Chief Carney had a little bit of an opening she wanted to make on this, and I'll be doing the procurement side, and Sergeant Devlin and Sheriff Schilling can talk ops.
Okay. Just as a reminder, if you're not participating at the moment, your mics were getting feedback. Alex, proceed.
Yes, sir. Chief Carney.
Is anybody else getting audio?
No. Hey, Brandy, we can't hear you. You might have
Alex,
to call in.
Sorry, Alex, can you go ahead?
Yeah, I will. When Brandy gets the audio working, I'll defer. This project is one that the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department leads for the automated license plate readers. This will be phase 2. The first phase was completed in 2018. This phase 2 includes 17 different locations throughout the county with multiple direction cameras. The award of $823,236.96 deals with both the installation in October, November time period, as well as the warranty and maintenance on the system through 2023. Public Safety Justice Services fiscal side, as a fiscal agent for this Homeland Security region, released an RFP in April. It closed in May. and we awarded to Celix, and it brought it to the group today to talk about. Due to potential COVID delays and winter weather that's coming up due to the outdoor installation, the request after Chief Carney talks, as well as the Sheriff's Department, would be to move this on a second reading suspension of rules. Chair.
And Alex, could you remind the committee as to the usage of this, the storage of the information, if any, how long that storage would occur? What's the target and the purpose?
Chair, if it's possible, I'd like to defer that one to the Sergeant Devlin or Sheriff Schilling or Chief Carney, who's there, since they handle the operation side of it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Devlin with the Sheriff's Department here. Can you please repeat your question? I want to make sure I answer it properly.
Well, I want to make sure everybody's comfortable that the program itself, it's not a targeted program for citizens. Its purpose and usage and the storage of the information. Could you go through that for us?
Yes, sir. During the phase one of this program, it was not challenged, but brought to our attention and confirmed by the ACLU that when this project began, that it was going to be for law enforcement purposes only. Okay, that no civilians would have access to the actual data or the license plate read on our servers. And in the first year of operations of license plate readers, we had 130 million license plate reads. And in the second year with the COVID-19, we had 90 million license plate reads. But all the reads are of just the license plate. Okay, none of the information of the owners or anything is actually transmitted with the license plate. We do have hot lists that come from the state. Okay, so it doesn't warn us or advise us if there are stolen vehicles or wanted people associated with that plate. But it's still up to the law enforcement officers to validate that plate and validate all warrants and everything before acting on it.
You anticipate a problem with the new law, no necessary front license plate? Is this just a rear license plate review now?
Yes, that is not going to be a factor because all of our license plate readers read the rear license plate after they go through the intersection, or if it's a mobile one, after the vehicle, after the mobile camera passes it, it looks back and reads the rear license plate. So it is not a factor that there is no front license plates anymore.
Any further questions from the committee? Hearing none, everybody, Nan, did you have anything or?
I'm sorry, this takes me a second to get off of mute.
Go ahead.
So if we have a child that's been kidnapped and they put out this alert, does this help us in that search?
Yes, great question. Absolutely. What will happen is any agency that has a Amber Alert or kidnap or any type of serious situation can call the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Center, who can automatically put that in a hot list, okay, notification, so that license plate will be alerted immediately on the dashboard, where they also monitor, okay, and can dispatch vehicles to that last location that license plate was read at.
Okay, and if a location was given, not the license plate, but a location was given, can you then zero in on that location and look at all the license plates, or?
Great question. Yes, ma'am. If we know a particular location that we have a fixed license plate reader on, we can do a search based on that location, date, time, and with the new software that's coming out shortly, we'll be able to narrow it down by vehicle make, model, and color also. So if we know that a certain intersection, we're looking for a license plate, ABC, okay, we can go to that intersection and go through it and know exactly what time that vehicle went to that intersection. Or if we know that a hit skip happened at that location around 12 p.m., we can go to that location and look at all the license plates that went to that location within the time parameter that we set up in the search.
Given we have a history now of 2019 with 130 million license plates that you've been able to see or document, have you had instances where this has helped people in trouble or in distress?
Yes, ma'am. Most recently, just in the past week or two, I received an email from the city of Parma. They have a fixed automated license plate reader stationed at State Road in Tuxedo. They had a patrol vehicle in that area, and an alert went off that a stolen vehicle went through that intersection. That officer was able to catch up to that vehicle, which was parked at On Target Firearms just down the street. When he approached, a couple suspects took off running. They were able to apprehend those suspects. And when they're doing an inventory of the vehicle prior to tow, they're able to recover a handgun, two handguns along with various drugs that were located in that vehicle.
Good. And just one last question. Did I hear you say how long you keep this information on file?
I did not mention it, but yes, we keep the information for 1 year from the date of the license plate read, unless an officer requests for us to hold it, okay, for investigative purposes or for trial, and then we will hold it longer and we will download it to a flash drive, okay, and give it to the case officer for their case.
Good. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your answers.
Okay.
Further questions? Hearing none, I will, if you're comfortable moving forward on 2020-0206, accept a motion and a second to move this forward under second reading suspension.
So moved, Baker.
Second, Tuma.
Okay, any further discussion? Are we good? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Young.
2020-0207.
Resolution number 2020-0207, authorizing a revenue generating agreement with City of Cleveland, Cleveland Municipal Court in the amount not to exceed $2,237,350 for legal services for indigent persons.
And who do we have speaking for the public defender?
Mark A. Stanton, Chief Public Defender. I'm also here with Mr. Budzar, Mark Budzar, the Administrator of the Public Defender's Office.
Thank you, sir.
This is a 2-year contract, although it indicates in the resolution it's a 1-year contract. It's a 2-year contract that's renewable by letter after the first year. It covers 100% of all expenses related to the municipal division of the county public defender's office. There's also a 3% administrative fee that reverts to the general fund. There's been some delay in here, but delay is always inherent in this particular process. That's not synonymous with it being placed on the shelf. We had to negotiate for additional funds. We did receive a modest $188,000 increase. That was to cover certain aspects of our collective bargaining agreement, such as milestones and COLAs. It was positive throughout, open process. If you need me to detail the chronological order, I'd be happy to do so. If not, I'm going to ask that there be I respectfully request that there's a suspension of the second reading, because there's a necessity to process these invoices for services so that the county can be reimbursed. Thank you.
That's correct. And are you working on 21 now?
Yes, and it's essentially approved. We just have to perfunctorily go through a letter that's sent, and then it's approved.
Right.
For the same amount of money.
Very, very frustrating, I know. Are there any questions for Mr. Stanton on this program for these services? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion on 2020-0207 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So moved, Brady.
Second, Conwell.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We good? All in favor?
If I may just ask, should this
Yes, ma'am.
should this date be changed to 2021, or is it only going to be for a couple of months?
It's for this year. It's for the full year. It's just taken some time to get here, and this will probably be the same thing next year.
Okay.
So this is for this year. These are ongoing services, are uninterrupted. This is just for reimbursement purposes.
Reimbursement. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Thank you, Mr. Stanton.
Thank you very much.
Be good. 2020-0208.
Resolution number 2020-0208, authorizing an amendment to agreement number AG 150004 with Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County for the Adult Probation Substance Abuse Residential Treatment Program.
Did I see Mr. Murphy?
You did. Good afternoon, Councilman, members of the committee. This is our resolution for funding for the RSET, the Residential Substance Abuse Program, through the Adams Board. The funding is $500,000 in general fund court allocation and $700,000 in Corrections Planning Board grant receipts. The funding goes to fund people in the corrections community involved in it that are in need of substance abuse treatment.
Questions? Hearing none. If everybody's comfortable with the timeline, I see once again we're past time, so you would like this to move forward?
If at all possible, that would be great.
Okay. If everyone's comfortable with moving 2020-0208 to the full council under second reading suspension, I'll accept a motion in a second.
So move, Conwell.
Second, Tuma.
Thank you. Are we set? No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much, Marty.
Okay.
Committee, under discussion items, I placed two, the action report that we received today. That's dated September 9th regarding the incident at the Justice Center. And I want to make sure that we made the committee aware and anyone interested of our policies and procedures regarding transgender inmates at the county jail. I had recalled that we have discussed this at different times in the past. I don't think all of us were on the council at the time, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware that we did have procedures in place, and we will have a bit of a discussion on that. The incident report, Sheriff Schilling's here. Sheriff, what I want to do is give the committee the ability to go in depth as to what went down at the protests and subsequent riots. But I just wanted you to touch on the report, the timing of this report. I know that the administration provided this to the media Friday, I believe. And then we got it today. So anything you can add right now, I'm going to have you back probably in 2 weeks to kind of get into the weeds on this. I certainly have some questions, and I'm certain others do. But I was wondering if you could take us through the process to where we are today. And then if anybody has any questions, we can certainly answer those.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, the rest of the committee. Just want to touch on briefly the length of time that it's taken to complete this report. Since the incident on May 30th, naturally we've had our normal day-to-day operations at the Sheriff's Department you know, with trying to reorganize the court structure, the daily issues we have to contend with the COVID epidemic. And so along with that, you know, it takes manpower to compile one of these reports, which Mr. Gallagher, as you know, you received a copy of the draft, is pretty extensive. So along with everything else we contend with on a day-to-day basis at the Sheriff's Department, you know, this has prevented us from, you know, using the personnel that we need to work solely concentrating on an after-action report. As you know, along with that, following at least 4 to 5 weeks after the initial event on May 30th, we've been assisting other departments in, you know, their protests. No matter how big, how small, if they ask us, we've been responding to those communities as well, to these multiple protests that have been held, which has demanded some of our resources. Also, there's been numerous reports that have that we've had to go over to compile the draft and the soon-to-be final copy, which we should have in a week. So those reports naturally had to be completed by the personnel involved, had to be reviewed by supervisors, and you know, sent through to Sergeant Greiner, who was largely responsible for compiling this report. We reviewed hundreds of hours of video footage, which was taken from body cameras, building surveillance cameras that are out on the streets, items that we've obtained from local media and social media, which also played a part in compiling our final report. Also, you know, all the less lethal use of force incidents that occurred on that day need to be reviewed to determine if they were in compliance with our use of force policy. You know, so after all this was completed, it led us to, you know, make some determinations after this report was completed. So the initial, you know, again, our initial intelligence, you know, we planned for this event based on the initial intelligence that we received, and along with, you know, other high profile events that we were monitoring throughout the country. Naturally, we also monitored our history with previous large protests, you know, namely, you know, what we dealt with the Timothy Russell, Melissa Williams, Tamir Rice, and the Republican National Convention. All those played a part in this. However, they didn't escalate to the extent that this particular event did. So again, we based our handling of this event on our experience, plus intel that we had received from the Cleveland Division of Police pre-event, that they were getting the same thing we did. You know, so they wanted to allow the protesters to continue with their protests, have control over the street within the limits of the law, of course, but allow them to freely protest without interfering with them. So we made some changes as a result of this report. Some of them are still underway, but at this time we're participating with Cuyahoga Community College in a training program that they've designed that'll provide substantial training not only to the sheriff's personnel, but to law enforcement officers throughout Cuyahoga County. The training will be a refresher on crisis intervention, de-escalation techniques, and managing emergency operations during mass gatherings and mass gatherings, protests, and riots. It will also, right now I have currently 12 deputies that are attending this training. We anticipate having 60 to 70 more deputies in attendance during this first round of classes. Again, this is going to be a countywide training initiative. It's going to put it's going to put us on the map for just the interagency training aspect of it. It's going to put us on the same page with Parma, let's say, should we have to go to a situation in that community. It's going to provide for a like type of training, if you will. We're also receiving additional mobile field force training to improve our ability to address mass gatherings, protests, and riots. We have purchased multiple long-range acoustic devices, which will give us the ability to project loud dispersal orders when these protests turn destructive or violent. We've inventoried and organized all our equipment for these types of events, which will allow us to improve on quickly deploying our equipment during these types of emergencies. We've also looked at improving our incident command system, which will allow better organization of our responding manpower. We've designated some staging areas so that we can, as we're getting intelligence for these events, we can pre-stage our equipment outside of the Justice Center. We had some issues with for instance, being able to get the bus, our prisoner bus out of the loading dock that night because of things that were going on the street. We didn't want to raise that loading dock door and have an influx of people start coming into the building. So we're going to establish, we know we're having these events where we could end up having entryways blocked that are going to give us access to our equipment. We're going to have some staging areas for that purpose at undisclosed locations. And we're also going to stage our employees there. They're coming in for shift changes in that. We ran into some unexpected issues that night for our corrections officers coming into work to jail that couldn't get through roadblocks or get into the areas that they needed to report for work. If we establish a staging area, we can meet them. We'll be able to get them inside the Justice Center and allow, safely and allow them to proceed with their shift. And this wouldn't only be for corrections, it would be for any employee that has the need to get in the building, the deputy sheriffs, what have you. So our command system is going to allow us better organization to have mutual aid with Cleveland Fire, EMS, and then the outside law enforcement agency as far as getting them into the hot zone quickly and getting them involved in being able to do what they have to do to quell the situation that's going on. The May 30th incident, upon our review of it, sitting with the command staff, it's revealed vulnerabilities and difficulties that we've experienced with booking some individuals, with booking people on the day of this event. So we're implementing, and we're going to be utilizing this in the near future here, but a mobile field booking system to assist agencies with bringing in arrestees, where we can deploy that anywhere, we can set it up, we can book our arrested subjects in, hold them, and then transfer them en masse down to the Justice Center once that whole process is completed. We're also working to correct the issue of, which again, we ran into because it's been a lot of years since we've had a mass protest where we've had to, deploy less lethal munitions. So we're working to correct that issue, being able to better monitor it. If we have expired less lethal munitions, being able to change that out, replenish these as needed, and keep these items in stock to not only handle situations that we may encounter down at the Justice Center, but situations that we may get called into in other jurisdictions in the county as well.
That's good. Good, Sheriff. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, before we get to that, thanks for that. Quite honestly, that's what I want to go over in a couple weeks more directly. Is this September 9th report that we have, is this final, or did I hear you say that there's still work to be done?
No, Mr. Gallagher, this is a draft report. There's still a couple items that need to be tied up, but we'll have that wrapped up in the week here, before the week's
Okay.
next Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll have that all wrapped up.
Well, then I think it important that in 2 weeks we have you come back and we can go through this. I don't want to be nitpicky, but I want to go through it to make sure we all understand, the pluses and minuses here, what happened, what didn't happen. There's still a lot of rumors and innuendo out there as to what's going on. There's a lot of media cherry picking and things like that going on. I just want to deal with the facts and what we were dealing with, what you were dealing with, what happened, and our process going forward. So unless anybody has further questions for the sheriff, I want us to be able to have that final report, review it properly, and then bring the sheriff and whomever he wants to bring with him back to go over it in a thorough manner. We good with that?
Now, may I just ask one for the next report, not to be answered right now, but
If you have a question, you have a question. I don't have a problem with that.
thank you. The part of the destruction in the business community, the Heinens and that whole stretch, what's the timeline of that as they made their way to the Justice Center? Why isn't that part of this in understanding how it began and how it traveled?
Well, I don't know why we didn't get that information sooner. I would assume that would have been something that would have been filtered over to us through the city of Cleveland, who was on that scene and had better access to the situations that were going on over there at the time. But that was not filtered back to us for some reason.
Will it be by the time we see you again in 2 weeks? Will we be able to see just, because that's part of this picture?
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry, Ms. Baker.
I was just going to say that it didn't just start at the Justice Center. It started.
It started. Yes, and I'm thinking that what went on at Heinen's and how these crowds started moving around the city and that, I think that information would be contained in the after action report completed by the Cleveland Police Department. And that may offer some more detail.
Will you have access to that in 2 weeks when we come back?
I don't know, Ms. Baker. I could see if Cleveland's willing to provide us access to that.
Wow.
But I will check on that. But
They had a meeting jurisdiction over there.
I would think that maybe if I don't want to come to the next council meeting and speak on the Cleveland Police report. If necessary, I could maybe have someone from Cleveland come in here and speak on that rather than me doing that. I'd rather concentrate on what we're doing here at the sheriff's office.
Okay, okay.
Man, that's,
Yeah, I know,
man, that's what I want to get into.
Yeah,
You've actually hit it on the head as far as we were kind of like the meat in the sandwich. It started somewhere else,
right.
came to us, the destruction occurred, and it moved on throughout the city.
Right.
I haven't heard where Cleveland's at. I know there's a lot of bickering as to release of that information. That, you know, that's up to them. But I do notice that they sure come quick to us when they're looking for money to, you know, give to these people who lost their businesses and the destruction that occurred. And I think we're owed an explanation as to where their police were or weren't. And I'm very interested as to how the National Guard just had to sit on the sidelines. And that's a direct, and I mean direct, request from the mayor of the city. And there's been nothing but silence on that side. So I think there's a lot of open questions there. We can only concentrate on what we can concentrate on. And I'd like to keep that as narrow as possible unless other things become available to us. And then we can ask those questions.
The only point that I guess I wanted to make is that when the crowd made itself to the Justice Center, there was already destruction happening. There was already no longer a protest, but a riot.
See, I don't know that. I have not heard.
Destruction of all the, I mean, how could we not, with looting and.
No, the Freeze, they moved from what I know, and that's why I want to go over this in a careful manner. They were at the Freeze Stamp, and as they moved to the Justice Center, that's when the problems began and it expanded. So I think we need to rely on what the sheriff and what, if Cleveland's going to be open with their report, I would welcome that, and we could kind of put these pieces together. I think at this point, it's not helpful to go in a direction that isn't truthful and honest, and we should just state it the facts. So I want our report to be final and Cleveland's report to be final, and I want it to be a factual presentation and review. And I don't, as the sheriff just said, they're not done yet. I'm not certain if Cleveland is or will ever release that report. We'll find out. And I'll ask the question. I mean, again, we can only worry about what we have to worry about right now. Okay?
All right.
But I would like to afford the sheriff and the police chief of Cleveland the opportunity to put everything of what they know into their report so we can review it and maybe get some questions answered.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want to, chime in a little bit. It's not our call, but it seems to me like, the safety committee of the Cleveland City Council, has a responsibility here. And as far as I can tell, they haven't stepped up to it.
I would hope, Mr. Brady, that the police report becomes public. I know some factual things accidentally, which is why I keep saying, and I keep pushing for the National Guard, why they were put on the sidelines. Nobody wants to touch that, and there is a definite reason why. And I know the county was foremost and upfront trying to get that done, and our executive was the person doing it, and he should be congratulated for that he saw what was happening before evidently the people in Cleveland, but I don't know that. But knowing the fact that the executive was concerned, needing those forces to be brought in, and it didn't happen until way late in the program, I think is a big question out there. I would hope eventually we get that answered. But again, I would like to stay where we're at. If Cleveland is helpful in the manner of providing information, certainly we're going to take everything we can to try and piece this together. But I think moving forward, what the sheriff has to say is going to be our guider as far as where we're going to go with potential in the future, what we should and shouldn't be doing. So a lesson learned, certainly. I think we're heading in the right direction with what we've provided to the administration and the sheriff's department and police forces throughout the county. And if there's any other gaps that we can fill, I'm certain that this council will be the ones that help fill them. Sheriff, so we'll give you, in a couple weeks, we'll bring it back. Hopefully we can get more information out of Cleveland. Could you go through the policy and procedure for the transgender inmates? And I don't know if you were going to present that or.
Yes, I looked at, but I have Director Gibson here and Warden Henry who are going to touch on that.
Right, and this committee, this is a concern to the unfortunate passing of a prisoner who was transgender, and there was concern and criticism, rightfully so, I think, in the community that things probably weren't handled properly. I just want to make sure that and I knew and I remembered we had this procedure in place. I want everybody to make sure that they knew that we did have that, and hopefully we followed those procedures. Rhonda?
Good afternoon, Council. Rhonda Gibson, Administrator of Corrections, Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. I forwarded a copy of the current LGBTI policy to a few members of the council. You will notice that the policy itself is from 2017, and we are in the process of updating that policy to include some additional verbiage. It does not necessarily change the content of the procedure, but just some updated wording and definitions within the policy. There is a pending investigation related to the inmates who passed, and at this time, I cannot comment on that investigation until it's complete.
He did a great job, but nothing to work. Those things that we're gonna do for the people. No, I know what I'm saying. Great job with it. Oh, yeah.
Hello?
Who do we have speaking?
You're sick. I literally just pulled out of the garage. I was gonna come home to see you.
Tell her she's on the phone.
Oh, you're on, oh, tell her mute.
Shit.
Yeah.
Brandy, I think it's, Brandy, can you hear us? Hello?
Well, okay, Rhonda, do you want to continue, please?
Oh my God. I'm not sure how much you heard, but to repeat, there is a pending investigation related to the passing of the inmate. So I'm not able to speak specifically to that.
Hey, Rhonda?
However,
Rhonda?
yes.
You want to tell the people in the background to mute themselves?
I gotta close this door.
They're speaking over you and it's coming through.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There is a pending investigation related to the passing of the inmate. And as a result, I'm not able to comment on that at this time.
Right, we
But
wouldn't
it's-
want you to.
Okay. As far as the policy that I sent, it's from 2017. And we have an updated policy that is pending. The updated policy does not necessarily change the process. It just includes some updated verbiage and definitions.
And you're updating that now, but it doesn't impact the actual policy itself, it's just change in verbiage?
Correct, yes. It just changes some verbiage, adds another definition, but it doesn't change the content of the procedure.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear that we did have a policy in place. I don't want to interfere with any investigations that are ongoing, so we won't go there. I just wanted to concentrate on the fact that we did have a policy, and I remembered that. But I thought it important the committee and the rest of council be made aware of that. So unless anybody has any questions for Rhonda, there's very little she can talk about, but we do have a policy in place. All good with that? Okay, Rhonda, thank you very much. When the report is finished, we'd appreciate a copy, preferably before the media gets it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.